Time now to take a look at what's grabbing headlines in the international newspapers. Belle Lupton has been scouring those for us. Good day to you, Belle.
Hi.
Let's start with it's the 70th anniversary today. In Japan, how are the papers reacting to this or noting this anniversary of Hiroshima?
Well, on the left-wing press, certainly, it is front and centre. If we look first of all at Main Chibi Shinbun, the story is on their front page with a photo, you can see it there, of people praying at the Hiroshima Memorial. Also on the front page, a little photo of Ban Ki-moon. You might just be able to spot it there. Now, that's because he's written an editorial inside the paper in which he says the world needs to listen to the hibakusha, which are the victims of radiation, including the children and further descendants of those victims. He calls in this paper for a world without nuclear weapons. This ties in nicely with the paper's own editorial policy, which is one of pacifism, essentially. It's pro-pacifist, at a time when Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is beefing up military capability in Japan and reinterpreting the constitution in order potentially to allow Japan to go to war in the future.
So that was the left-wing press. What about the right-wing?
Well, you can see on the front page of Sankei, which is a right-wing paper or centre-right paper, not a mention of Hiroshima, which is really strange. And, you know, we sort of went through that paper trying to find another mention of it. And it's very, very stripped down in what it talks about. It's just got a couple of factuels and that's it, nothing more than that. So just a few bare bones, a few facts, no more editorial on it. The New York Times, however, on the American side, does have coverage of this story. It spotlights in the New York Times one of the survivors, this time, though, talking about a very unusual and highly personal project to preserve and pass on the experiences of atomic bomb victims whose numbers are rapidly dwindling. I should have said survivors and not victims. The photo here shows, just there, the photo you see is showing Hiromi Hasai and the guardian, the official guardian of his memories, who's called Ritsuko Kinoshita. Now, what happens is he tells her his memories in order, hopefully, for these to be written down, passed on for future generations so that they're not lost. And the New York Times goes on in that same article to have photos of the bomb attack. So just after the bomb attack, really stark photos showing here 1945 on the left and today on the right, the same building, which is now the Hiroshima Memorial. The Guardian also showing a lot of photos. This is a story that's really being told in photos across the press. It's got a visual guide of Hiroshima and the nuclear age. Starts with the Manhattan Project, fears of the nuclear bomb from Germany. You've then underneath, you've got the bomb there going off. You've got here with the yellow, very quickly going past, a radius of the destruction of Hiroshima and then 3 days later of Nagasaki, showing that 2-kilometre wide ring of destruction. I mean, here again, ending in the bunkers. So quite strong images in The Guardian.
Indeed. Well, let's move now, Belle, closer to home. A story from across the channel. A famous Islamist preacher has been charged with terror offences.
So this is not the first time that he's been detained, but it's the first time that he's been charged. His name is Anjem Choudary. He's well known in the UK as a radical Islamist preacher. This is the first time he has been charged because of new beefed up anti-terrorism laws in the UK. He's been accused of inviting support for the Islamic State organisation in the UK. And the Washington Post has a look at this in more detail. It says the Choudary trial will be a major test of the British government's new strategy against extremism in all its forms. And it goes on to explain a little bit about Choudary. So he's a lawyer by training, and the interesting thing for the Brits about him is that he has 32,000 followers on Twitter, and he uses those to try and garner support for his Islamist and radical causes. He's led various radical groups in the past, which were then banned for extremist activities. And over the last few months, he's become increasingly enthusiastic in his support of IS. Now, the Washington Post goes on in another article to criticise Fox News' Sean Hannity, who you can see there in the picture, for his inviting Choudary on air as a guest, not just once, but but more than once, several times. So the first appearance, they say, was okay. That had justification. It was after the James Foley beheading, and they invited him on. The conversation, they say, was predictably full of shouting, name-calling. Hannity got to play the truth-telling hero to Chowdhury's terror-worshipping villain. But then he returned onto Fox News in January after the Charlie Hebdo attacks, where he was called by Hannity an evil SOB. I won't give you the full. But essentially what the Washington Post is saying is this just gives Choudhury a platform.
Okay, always a debate there between giving people airtime and covering them. But anyway, let's move on. Finally, Belle, tonight, the last episode of The Daily Show. Jon Stewart stepping down after 16 years.
Yes, and Slate magazine has an article written by a former correspondent who was on the show right at the beginning, Brian Unger. He tells the story of the show's evolution from the satirical programme poking the eye of the traditional media to the darling of the traditional media, because of course, the whole press fell in love with The Daily Show. The New York Times picks up on that idea and has an example of something that Jon Stewart would have been perfect to comment on, the Republican debate going on tonight in the States. But of course, he won't be able to comment on that because he will have recorded his show just a few hours earlier. And Tom Tolles in the Washington Post tells us what he thinks of that Republican debate that will be happening with this cartoon, in which you can see, as opposed to the Olympic symbol, the debate symbol. It's a circus ring in which, as the little caption says at the bottom, the donor gets the megaphone. So that's what he thinks of US politics.
OK, I have to say, I'm surprised that Jon Stewart stepped down just ahead of those elections. I'm sure he would have quite enjoyed it.
One last throw would have been great for him, wouldn't it?
Exactly. Well, Belle Upton, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks indeed for now.